Having talked about the ictus and the breathe and listening for stresses, I think we should look at one of those poems that I had highlighted in yellow in the schedule. And probably the best poem for us to look at would be I Want to Die While You Love Me. And let's see. So in your book, that's going to be on page 977. The author, the poet is Georgia Douglas Johnson. This was published in 1928. But I will tell you that poems published in 1928 didn't necessarily sound as, I guess, as rhymey and as metrical as this poem does. So let's listen to this poem for just a moment. I want to die while you love me. I want to die while you love me, while yet you hold me fair, while laughter lies upon my lips and lights are in my hair. I want to die while you love me, and bear to that still bed your kisses turbulent, unspent, to warm me when I'm dead. I want to die while you love me, oh, who would care to live, till love has nothing more to ask and nothing more to give. All right, so by my reading that, you can probably pick up on irregularity in sound, right? I mean, of course, we do have rhyme, but rhyme is not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the sort of metrical flow that you hear going on as I read the poem. So let's take that first stanza. I want to die while you love me, while yet you hold me fair. Those first two lines. And let's take a moment to scan that. I want you to mark where you hear the stresses and then, the unstressed syllables in those first two lines. And you can pause this video, and when you do that, we'll come back and we'll talk about where we hear those stresses. All right, so I'm hoping that you have taken a moment to mark where you hear the stresses and the unstressed syllables. So if we look at that first line, I want to die while you love me. Personally, I hear the stress with the word want. I want. I also hear the stress with die. I want to die. The last half of this line, I think, is where it gets a little bit tricky. I want to die. We could say, while you love me. We might be tempted to do that. I don't necessarily hear it that way. I want to die while you love me. I almost feel as though while and you are not necessarily stressed. I'm not hearing that. I want to die while you love me. I definitely hear love as being stressed. Okay, so that would mean the words that I hear as being unstressed would be I, to, probably while and you, and then the word me. And then the stressed syllables would be want, die, love. All right, let's look at that second line. While yet you hold me fair. This one is easier. This one is much easier, I think. There's regularity there that I think didn't exist in the first line. So, yet, I hear emphasis or stress on that word. Hold, I hear stress on that word. And fair, I hear stress on that word. That means that while, you and me would be unstressed. It's possible you could have like 5 people scanning the same poem, and people are going to hear things a bit differently. I mean, that happens. But I think we probably will be able to agree on line 2. Yeah. While yet you hold me fair. Okay. So once we mark, and I would say, if you're really trying to scan a poem, you could scan the whole poem, but definitely the first stanza. I'll try scanning the first stanza and see what you come up with. And you want to look for patterns, right? So let's take a moment to go back to our description of feet. Okay, so remember that I have handouts posted for our class that talk about poetic feet. Also, we have a section in our book that talks about poetic feet. All right, so let's think about our poem again, especially that second line, since it is so, I think it's just so easy to hear the meter in that line. So, while yet you hold me fair. So I'm sensing a pattern of unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. So what is that pattern called? When you have unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. So let's think about that for a moment. Unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. You might look at my handout. You might look at the pages in the book that talk about feet. So if you said that that pattern is iambic, then you are correct. Now, however, we have to think about how many feet do we have per line. So if we go back and look at that, second line, while yet you hold me fair, when we think about how many, we can see it visually on the page, like how many slushes, or what would be the plural of ictuses? Is it ictuses or is it icti? I don't know. I would have to look that up. But anyway, how many of those do we have in a line? And we can actually hear this too. While yet you hold me fair, right? So how many beats did you count? I counted 3. So it looks like we have what would we call this? What would we call the meter? Just based on that second line, I'm thinking iambic trimeter. But to know for sure, we probably would want to do more than just those 2 lines. Again, I think it's a good idea to maybe do the first stanza and see a pattern going on. If we choose to go with, for the first line, emphasizing while, then we would have, let's see, I want to die while you love me. We would have 4 beats for that line. So if you were to tell me, hey, I think this is primarily iambic trimeter, or if you were to tell me, I think this is primarily iambic tetrameter, then I would be like, okay, I can see that. I can see that going on, because that refrain of "I want to die while you love me" is a little problematic to scan in a very uniform way. So that is how you determine, that is how you scan a poem. That is how you figure out the sounds, the meter that you're hearing, and where you're hearing the stresses versus the unstressed parts of a line.